I I am delighted to be here and to see so many friends from my previous life as the CEO of the TB Alliance. So I had two reasons to come today. First of all, because I was invited by these two wonderful organizations who you will see. Ours actually does, in many ways, work very, very similarly to, but also because I am a closet groupie of the TV world. I am your biggest fan, and I can't believe the amazing, amazing changes that have happened since I first became part of this world in 2001. So today, my hat is that of the president of the Foundation for NIH, and I have a great challenge and a great opportunity. The great challenge is that I've only been in the job for less than 100 days. And the great opportunity is I can say pretty much whatever I want, and my staff will correct me. So if you all find that there are glaring errors, I will take full responsibility for the lack of sophistication being brand new in the position. So let's see. Now this is that way. Here's what I've been asked to address in the next 10 minutes, which, as you can imagine, is fairly impossible. You can read the points as well as I can, but I will do my best to try and coalesce all of them into sort of a coherent presentation. And I will start by reminding myself about the Foundation for the NIH, and hopefully, for those of you who do not know us, here's who we are and what we do. We were, in fact, created by the Congress of the United States to help in the mission of the National Institutes of Health. Our job is to enable the NIH to do things that otherwise, because they're a federal agency, they can't do. So, for example, we're able to receive donations. We're able to proactively seek funding. We can and do have construction projects, but the majority of what we do, the bulk of our money and the bulk of our efforts go into creating the kinds of partnerships that our colleagues from the IMI and the Critical Path Institute have already spoken about. Some of you may have heard of the iSpy trial. Some of you may have heard of OMOP. Some of you may have heard of our Biomarkers Consortium. So these are not unknown groups of people. I have fantastic scientists that work at the foundation that manage and coalesce and move these programs forward. Most of our money goes into these research projects, and every 94 cents of the dollar goes out the door. So we're very, very nimble. And we have a fantastic group of board members. It's an independent board. It's an independent organization, people from industry, people from academia, people from the philanthropic world, and the NIH director and the Food and Drug Commissioner are part of our board. In fact, I sit on Peggy Hamburg's scientific advisory board at the FDA. So what I wanted to do in a nutshell is tell you a little bit about how, in addressing the first points that I was asked to address, which was how do we identify and prioritize new projects? How do we ensure that key stakeholders are involved? How do we avoid duplicating efforts? Talk about intellectual property and the benefits of collaboration are all summarized in one slide. So here we are. Let's start from the very beginning. How do we get our projects? Our projects come from many, many different directions. We may have a scientist at NIH that says, I think this is a very good area. There is a gap. We cannot do it at the NIH alone. We need to bring collaborations. We don't have the tools to bring the collaborations to the table. Can you help us? We get projects from pharmaceutical companies that come to us and say, pretty much, we need a neutral partner. We need a platform in which we can bring all these different parties to play. And we do get some people that come to us from the outside that say, we would like you to manage these projects for us. One wonderful example of that was when Bill and Melinda Gates put together the grand challenges. The grand challenges were administered by the foundation of NIH. So we're very nimble. we can work with different models, and we pride ourselves on being able to figure out how to do that in a clever and proactive way. Each project has a steering committee. The steering committee has scientific experts. We have people who know the industry, who know the FDA, who know the basic underpinnings of the project that we're trying to work. And again, we also work in the pre-competitive space. But one of the first things we do when we get a project is, and we get a lot of projects. Right now we're managing about 100 projects. The bulk of it, about 60 of them, are science-based. The others have to do with education or construction or things like that. But the bulk of the money and the bulk of the projects are in the scientific enterprise. And so when they come, we do have a very clear selection criteria. Is it important? Does it support biomedical research? Does it fit within our knowledge and expertise? And importantly, can we fund it? Unlike the IMI, we do not have an endowment, so we have to go looking for people who are going to support our project. So the project can be a wonderful project, but there can be zero interest outside and have nobody support it. So clearly that would not be something that we would be keen to support. Once it has passed these hurdles, we put a steering committee and the project team. We have expert project management people in our staff. They come usually from industry, from either biotech or pharma, years and years of experience, and they're very, very good at project management. So we develop a protocol, we figure out what the resources are, we insist on data sharing and allowing the data distribution. And I've skipped over IP now because I have forgotten it, but because I want to say a couple more things. So we establish the milestones, we establish if we need to do a trial, we hold the IND, for example, for iSpy. So if we need to do a trial, are all the IRB assurances and all the human subject protections in place? And we have, of course, for every single one of our projects and every single dollar that comes in, we have a legal agreement and a legal review to make sure that it's all in good shape. Intellectual property. So I asked my staff here, what about intellectual property? And they said intellectual property is not a problem. And I said intellectual property is always a problem. So what do you mean by the fact that it's not a problem? Well, what it's meant by that is that they very clearly figure out what the rules of the game are at the very beginning. So if you're going to be part of a particular project, you very clearly know what the expectations are for sharing, what the expectations are for background IP, which remains with the companies, what the expectations are for authorships and publications, etc. So these issues are sorted out at the very, very beginning. And in fact, I asked how it had worked, and it works very, very well. It changes the mindset of people. And interestingly enough, it changes the mindset of academicians as much as people in industry. Industry is not used to sharing some of these, some of this information, and we have found that they've been incredibly, incredibly proactive and supportive of these projects. And in academia, it's very unusual for them to accept that there are others that also can tell them where the next step is. They're used to being quite independent, and this notion of moving together and having milestones can be a bit foreign for them. So we move forward, we secure the funds, and of course we manage the program. And we manage the program very, very aggressively and very actively. We have calls and meetings, etc., to make sure that the project is on time. So on the question of participation of the key stakeholders, well, from where we sit, it is good practice, it is good business, and it makes good sense. So why in the world would we not bring to the table people who are deeply interested in ensuring that whatever information, technology, innovation comes to the fore? So, like the two colleagues that have spoken before, we are a neutral convener, and it allows to be inclusive. We're quite agnostic. We know who we want at the table, and we go proactively to get them. This is the kind of nimbleness that I was talking about. You're going to forgive me. I seem to have caught a cold in the plane, so my apologies. Let's see. So, how do we go about getting the people for these projects? We go to the highest levels of government, to the highest levels of industry, to our non-for-profit partners, and to patient advocacy groups. We have very broad outreach with the private sector, including, by the way, foundations like ours. So we do receive money from other foundations in order to implement the programs. We use the web. We do open solicitation for grants and for contracts, and we collaborate with organizations that have global mandate. And with respect to the scientific partnerships, I've mentioned it before, but it is worth repeating. We do bring the brightest and the best from around the world. Again, we're quite agnostic of where our scientists come from. We simply want the best, the people who have the most experience, and the people that can help us move forward. With respect to the question of, let's see, what about the benefits of collaborating between the U.S. and the EU? I thought that was a loaded question. Of course, we want to collaborate with the U.S. and the EU. I think Martha said it before. The breadth and the complexity of the science that we deal with today is quite amazing. We used to, when I first got into the PPP or PDP world, we would talk about bilateral agreements. And I see Harry here, who was one of the first funders of the TB Alliance, and my eternal gratitude goes to him for having done that. And Jan can also tell you that from Gates, who's also here, that in fact we were talking about one-to-one collaborations, bilateral agreements. Not anymore. It really is a matrix of collaborators. And when you see and look at the partnerships that we move forward, it really is an amazing array. We do keep them in a matrix, and we're sure that we have representatives of all of them. So our shared experience from multiple parties, we have to come together, address precision medicine. There's an enormous amount of data out there. Trying to figure out how to call this data, how to mine this data is something that we can certainly do. And we can leverage, avoid duplication, have appropriate redundancy when needed, but we are sure that bringing parties from the rest of the world to help us move forward is not only the way to go, it is the smart way to go, and it is good business. So thank you very much.